Hi, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is Listening Beyond the Soundbites. Last month, I went to the State House to attend Vermont's Disability Awareness Day, and my guest was supposed to come with me, but sadly she wasn't able to make it because we were going to interview many of the people that were there that she knows and I know. And what we're doing today is I've invited Stirling Peebles to come back on the show. Sterling, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, Pat.
Good. And Ben Kinsley's with us, of course. He's our co-host and co-producer. And for those who don't know Stirling, she's a self-advocate for the disabled. And so I thought at the end of interviewing our discussion with Stirling, we're going to show you what was videotaped at the Disability Awareness Day with all the people we're going to be talking about. And so first, Stirling, could you talk a little bit about yourself, although you've been on the show 3 times, I think, now.
4.
With 4?
Back in 2015.
Oh, all right, 4. Go right for it. Tell us all about what you've been doing in college these days.
Well, I just recently completed a professional certificate in Human Resource Management from Champlain College online.
That's great. And it was very busy because you kept posting, I've got a paper due, I've got 2 papers due. You were working really hard.
It's one of the most intense classes I've ever taken.
Yep. And you even tell them, you even looked at it, this is cool. We had a big case years ago about independent contractors where I was...
when you were at DOL?
When I was at Department of Labor, and they studied that case on independent contractors.
Oh, wow.
So she read my name. And she probably raised her hand and said, I know this woman.
It was a tough topic.
So was it a famous case or was it an infamous case?
Well, it was infamous because it was actually picked up by a lot of people around the United States. It was very famous. So we won. We persevered. We won. So that was a good thing. And tell us about the Think College.
Well, I graduated in 2014. I got a College of Studies certificate.
Very nice. And that was at UVM?
Yes.
Very nice. And where do you work? You work?
I work at the Center on Disability and Community Inclusion at UVM.
Ah.
I'm a destination assistant for Think College, Vermont.
Very nice. Now, do you work for the Green Mountain Self-Advocates here?
Yes, I do.
So how do you fit all that in? It's only a week. Do you do part-time work for all these folks, or?
Part-time work.
Oh, okay, great. Very nice.
So that's pretty cool. You're working with the organization that helped get you through your degree at UVM.
Right, yeah, the Think College.
Which is pretty cool.
Well, she was, let me see if I get this right. You know, every year they have the 40 brightest stars for people under 40?
Yeah, the Rising Star Award from
she won that
Magazine.
one year. She was a rising star, weren't she?
2016.
Yes, good job.
I was nominated by my job at the Center on Disability and Community Inclusion.
Very nice, at UVM.
Yes.
Well, tell them about your employment Facebook, what she's been doing to get the disabled employed.
Well, I have a great group called the Employment Corner. I'm up to 930 members already.
Yeah.
It's about helping people with disabilities become employed. It's for the agency staff, all the professionals in this support employment field.
Yep. Now, you should sign on to that. It's the Employment Corner.
Yeah, let's check it out.
And she wants to just get to 1,000. And what she's trying to do is to encourage people with disabilities to apply, because they want to work, and how to apply for a job. But also, she has a lot of information on there on why it's important for an employer to have a diverse workforce, right?
Like,
we were talking about that before. Why is it important to have a diverse workforce with different people and different skill sets?
And you all bring different ideas to the table,
right.
And plus it will benefit all the parties involved. The employer, the company, the employees,
yep.
And even the direct support people. You can get something out of it.
That's right.
They're learning from that person with a disability.
Because it makes them feel really good, and they work very hard,
yes.
Right? All right, so now, after we finish talking to Stirling, I'll just repeat, we're going to show a video from the Disability Awareness Day, and we're going to talk about some of the people you're going to hear from. The first is Max Barrows, and I'm just going to read a little bit about what Max said. that Max has autism, and he's a very good friend of Stirling's, and he works for Green Mountain Self-Advocates, and he was everywhere at the Disability Awareness Day. He's one of the leads in that whole day. But he talked about the cuts to developmental services in the governor's budget. The legislature's got a couple of weeks. I heard that those were put back in, but now that's heading to conference, so we don't know about the cuts. He also talked about what would be impacted if those developmental services went away. And he talked about the importance of having dreams and hopes, and that people with disabilities should be judged on their abilities, not their disabilities. And he encouraged people to talk to their legislators and to tell them how important it is for people with disabilities to work.
So Stirling, one of the things that the event was highlighting was cuts to developmental services. And what do these cuts potentially mean for you and your friends in the Disability Awareness Coalition?
Well, we won't get new jobs, no involvement in the community, like this.
Right.
And no safety net if I get sick.
So, so the safety nets for folks who are disabled are different than the safety nets that we have in place for regular workers. I mean, Pat, I
well,
think
they were talking about cuts to Medicaid, right? Yes, Medicaid. And Stirling has a woman who helps her. She's been with her since I think Stirling was 11, you told me. So she helps her drive and go to work and helps her at work. And that woman's job is at risk of being underfunded.
Gotcha.
So Stirling would not have this woman's help. And Max Barrows has a gentleman, Lee, I forget Lee's last name, but he goes with Max to work, and a lot of the disabled people have other people to help them. And so if they don't have that services, they wouldn't be able to succeed in their jobs.
And these folks are Medicaid funded?
Yeah, I think so. Through the, yes.
And that is a discretionary expense from the state, so the state has authority over those spending.
And that's what the governor cut out of the budget. But I think it might be put back in the Senate. But you know how it's going these days, is they're looking for money. So, but you would be directly impacted with not having somebody to help you.
Yes.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
It would not be. It would be a flat as a pancake.
Yes, it's flat
as a pancake. I love that. I'm going to have to use that one. Flat as a pancake. So another gentleman that we spoke to at the event was Ed Paquin, who's the Executive Director of Disability Rights Vermont. And he talked about the theme of community health and well-being, which was also the theme of the day for that event.
Right.
Stirling, what does community health and well-being mean to you? Was that is there something specific that that theme really evokes for you and the other people in the Disability Coalition?
Well, we want to be happy in the community. We're healthy.
Right.
We definitely want money, so.
You know, to buy things.
Money.
You know, it's always a good.
Well,
it's always good.
Be a little independent.
Independent.
Yep.
And get out there.
And that's part of being employed too, right? That's part of the reason why it's important for people who are disabled to have employment. Is that there's a certain level of independence that comes with employment.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yep.
He learns quick.
He does learn quick. I told you, he's a smart young man.
So I don't know. There's a bunch of things we could talk about here if we really.
Well, I'd like to ask Stirling about the hopes and dreams that Max talked about, because he said we all have hopes and dreams, and I am sure you have your own hopes and dreams, and everybody who's disabled. Are you able to talk a little bit about how important it is to have hopes and dreams?
Yes, I can, Pat.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Let me see. Well, we all have hopes and dreams, and it is all right.
It's all right, right?
Let's see. Well, my dreams was going back to college.
And look at you.
And I went to Champaign College for 2 years in 2016, and I was able to do it on my own.
That's right. Yep. And Stirling knows more people in this state than I'll ever know.
I know.
She knows them by name. They know her. She's not the quietest, shyest person you'd ever want to meet.
I used to be very shy.
Did you really? When was that?
Back in the day.
Back in the day.
I think that was before I met you. Yeah, I met her at the Price Chopper one time, and I hear from across the room, Pat!
Sterling, how long have you been involved in advocacy and being a self-advocate? Because I've heard your name pop up all over the place.
I've been involved since 2006.
2006, so over 10 years you've been
11
involved.
years.
11 years.
Talk a little bit about the Green Mountain Self-Advocates, because they're right here in Montpelier.
Yes, we have an office at 2 Prospect Street. There's a Facebook page you can like. And let me see. It's fun working there, and
you do good things.
I do positive things for different people out there.
Right. Do you go up to the legislature sometimes and talk to them about
I do.
what the needs that you have are and what they should be doing for
Yes,
the
I
community?
know a lot of people.
Yes, you do.
And you work at Think Vermont at UVM, the center there. You work here in Montpelier at the on Tuesdays at the with the coalition, and then you do other things too. You're out all the time. You have your employment corner, your Facebook page. How do you juggle all of that?
Well, life is a balance.
That's right.
Of course, I do talk to a lot of my friends, especially one guy who caught one fish.
She's talking about our photographer here. What is your title, Zach? Who knows? Post-production guy who went fishing for a week, caught one fish.
But we love him anyway.
We love him anyway. He's a good guy. Anyway, and you were she was here on an internship at ORCA.
Yes.
And you worked at
WCX News.
Yes, and you know who her favorite guy is? I know.
Your favorite guy at CAX?
CAX.
Who's your favorite guy at CAX?
Gary.
Gary Sadowski.
Oh, everyone loves Gary.
Yes, exactly. So listen, your friend Nicole LeBlanc also worked for the Green Mountain Advocacy when she was here. She's now in Washington, D.C., and she represents the Vermont Lend program, which is a leadership program for people with disabilities. And I interviewed her, and of course, Nicole is not shy either.
No.
And she said that there is a war on disability, on the disabled. But you and I were talking about that. What do you think about her statement?
But I don't think it's a war at all. It's like different battles of topics out there.
Maybe people just don't understand.
I was going to say, maybe a lack of understanding.
Yeah.
Or the lack of misinterpretation.
Misinterpretation, right? But she did say one good thing. She said everybody should follow the golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated, and we can't argue with that.
No, you can't.
You know. And you and Nicole are good friends.
Very good friends.
Yes. Yeah.
It's always a good operating,
Yes, it is.
operating status.
Yes, exactly.
Treat everyone the way you want to be treated.
Yeah. And she said that diversity makes what makes America great. And I think we sort of covered that, where you get people with different ideas, different experiences, and bring them to the table.
And different skill sets.
Different skill sets. I must say, when I first came to Vermont, that was hard for me to get used to the non-diversity. This was years ago when I first came here. It's gotten much better. But I came from New York City, and you had, at a board table or a boardroom or any meeting room, there was always people with different, and they always brought something interesting to the table. They would look at things differently than I would look at. And it was interesting to hear their take on something. And you'd wind up with a much better product because you know, I don't understand the problems that Stirling may have, and she doesn't understand mine. Yeah. And so you talk about it.
It's a collaboration.
Yes, exactly.
Well, and that's one of the interesting things. I've heard this a couple times in critiquing Vermont is, you know, our population is so homogenous. We don't have a whole lot of diverse life experiences or diverse opinions or
the food that goes along with all the
food that
ethnic
goes along
backgrounds.
with all exactly. Yeah. Good luck trying to find decent Mexican food.
No,
here.
I know.
Julio's. You want to go there?
Julio's pretty good. Yeah.
Julio's is good.
Pretty good.
So anyway, and then they had Max Burrows once again was leading. They have a group of leaders that these young people go to leadership courses, and they gave presentations at this event. And one group in particular, I felt it was shocking to hear this, that they talked about having to enter buildings from the back entrance, never being given a chance to learn for yourself, having people make decisions for you when you're right in the room. And we talked about that before, and that's not good.
It's not good because it was about the person. They should be there at the table.
That's right.
Like that pie plant.
That's right.
So basically, you should be making decisions.
Like the potted plant.
Like a potted plant. You shouldn't be making decisions for other people, particularly. I mean, you shouldn't do that anyway.
No.
But I think that's the assumption that maybe it's the assumption that people can't make decisions for themselves. Someone who's disabled can't make a decision for themselves, and I think that's inaccurate. Yeah.
I told you the story about in the Washington County Mental Health 50th anniversary, where there were a group of four men, who couldn't verbalize anything, but they taught them to type the poems that these guys. I was in tears. Seriously, I couldn't. It's all in their heads, and they don't know how to express it, but they're smarter. They were using words I wouldn't even know what they meant. I mean, these guys really had it together, but they just couldn't explain themselves. And so how sad if we just disregard them.
I know. We went to the 50th anniversary of the Washington County Mental Health Services, and they read those poems.
Weren't they amazing?
And they
I
were
bought
amazing.
the book. I got the book.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So if you've never had really the experiences that these young people were talking about. Have any of your friends ever been sort of mistreated or misunderstood? You were talking about like in a restaurant somewhere where...
If a waiter walks up to someone with a disability, they're going to assume you will be talking to you and to me.
Right. I bet you set them straight, Sterling. Sometimes.
I bet she did.
Sometimes.
No, I think that's really sad, and I'm sure you would know how to handle that. But it must hurt other people. That
the rejection.
Yeah, exactly. That's hard.
Yes.
Has there ever? You don't have to answer this if you don't want to. But has there ever been an instance where someone did that to you, or you felt like someone wasn't valuing you as a person?
No.
No, but you know why? Her mom and dad are so amazing, and I think since she was little, you just do what you want to do, just like college, right? Go do it.
Hey, I'm tough. They can come after me.
Exactly.
We have to get you some boxing gloves.
Yeah, right, exactly. She could take them on.
Yeah.
Anyway, so at the end of this day, the governor was talking. And he was talking about the importance, he was talking about the cuts he made to developmental services, but he was also talking about that people want to work. And that's really important to you and to Max and to Nicole. You're all working, you're all contributing. And I think Ed Paquin at the end of the day said that all of the people that were at the Disability Awareness Day, they all want to work, they all want to contribute, they want to make money, and they want to be independent, right?
Right.
That's important.
Yes.
And you work really hard to get that to happen through the Green Mountain Advocacy. So
I try.
You try. Well, you're good. And I think that employment corner is fabulous.
Well, here's interesting, and Sterling, you might know the answer to this. Do we know how many disabled persons we have in Vermont currently, today?
Not without doing any research, I don't know.
Yeah. I think Ed might have mentioned it on the video, but I don't remember the number.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because it's got to be a fairly large number, right?
Right.
And I would also be curious to know how many of them have jobs, and how many of them are looking for jobs.
And you know, the governor was standing there, and there's this whole room full of people who wants to work. Everybody raised their hands. And without the developmental services, like the woman that helps Sterling or the gentleman that helps Max, they wouldn't be able to go to work. And I hope to goodness they keep that money back in there, because that upset me when I heard that. Because otherwise, Max said he'd stay home and drive his mother crazy. He said,
at least he's got a plan.
Right? Max said he'd stay home and drive his mother nuts.
I would stay home and watch soap operas.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that works too.
With bonbons.
Daytime television.
Daytime television, right. So at the end, everybody was asked by Ed to talk to their legislators. If you were there, what would you say to legislators about what they need to do to help the disabled in this state?
Listen to all the parties before making any final rash decisions, and have different forums.
Forums, right?
Yeah, so they all come together and find a neutral ground.
That's good, because I think a lot of them, without knowing somebody who's struggled, they don't really understand what it is to be disabled.
Or walk in someone's shoes.
There you go, walk in somebody's shoes.
And I think it goes back to that understanding piece, right?
Right.
Is you have to listen to really understand, why so many disabled people want to work and want to get out and contribute and and be independent. Yeah,
and tell me, what was the workshop that was called that we abolished here in Vermont?
Sheltered workshops.
Sheltered workshops. That's where it's like assembly line, and the disabled would put like buttons on cards, sort of, and the disabled community rose up against them, and they're gone from here, because that's not the kind of stimulating work that somebody with a disability needs or wants. And I told you when I went to this funeral down in Tarrytown, I sat opposite a woman who had her daughter with her who was disabled.
Yeah.
And she didn't have the right Vermont attitude.
Yeah.
I felt very sorry for the young woman, because she was nowhere near what Stirling has accomplished.
Well, and it's amazing, because there was a movie a couple years ago called The Accountant. It was a Ben Affleck movie.
Yeah.
And Sterling, you may have watched this one, but it made a lot of headlines, because the main character, who was played by Ben Affleck, was autistic. But he was but they portrayed him as being really intelligent. He was he could outsmart everyone. And it was a really interesting movie. Cool. Yeah, it was very interesting. Well, that's
like Max Barrow has autism, but I think he's really high functioning, or somebody with autism, right? Because he's so articulate, and he has presented to the Congress in Washington, D.C. A couple of years ago, he went down and talked to the Congress, to some committee room. So anyway, we have a lot of people watching you at the moment there, young lady. What do you want to tell them? Show them your cup that says "Vote for Vermont" on it.
Self-promotion?
Yes,
self-promotion.
Exactly. Self-promotion.
We're all about self-promotion.
That's us. Yes, yeah. What would you like to tell those who are watching you right now about those who have disabilities, and what you'd like from them?
Well, let me see. Well, I went to trade school, so that really got me interested in the film and technology.
Mm-hmm. And communication.
Yes.
And marketing. You got it all.
I did.
And photography is one of your hobbies.
Yes.
As well.
Yep, she's pretty good at it too.
Yeah, and you have a really broad array of interests.
Yes, I do.
Which is very cool.
So don't count her out.
And what's the Facebook page that people should go to if they're looking to help someone?
The Employment Corner.
The Employment Corner.
Yes.
Yep, and we want to get you to 1,000, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So go home and go like the Employment Corner if you're not already home watching
And
us.
please stay with us while you watch the Disability Awareness Day. That place was packed. There were people with disabilities in the hallways, in all of the committee rooms. It was an amazing day. And I certainly hope the legislators who were there were paying attention. And my particular concern is the developmental cuts. And also, they were talking about, they came up with the same, remember when Mary Moulton was here, she was talking about cuts to the health workers. Mm-hmm. They were promised, apparently, Ed Paquin said that those people were promised raises 2 years ago, and it didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
And so there's a lot of people who love the work they do, working with people with disabilities, helping them at work and driving them around and getting to know them, and now they haven't gotten a raise. And one group hasn't gotten a raise in 9 years, and Ed talks about it on the video. And they were absolutely promised. So that's a bad thing. So
yeah,
we need to at least honor our promises. Sterling, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you, Pat.
Superstar.
Thank you, Ben.
Sterling, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for tuning in, you all. We'll see you next week. And in the meantime, keep listening beyond the sound bites.
And our well-being. With all that's going on in the world and the state lately, this is a timely theme. And I think that you folks know and experience what those things outside of what is strictly medical have an effect on our health and well-being. Our housing, our ability to get work, our ability to get support just to get out in the community. And those are all issues that are very much in play this year when we look at what's on the agenda in the legislature, either that's been put there by legislators or very much, maybe even more pertinently, what's been put there in the administration's budget proposal. Here we go. And at 5, there's a lot of them. We've got, what do we got? We got about 10 of the basic agencies, and I think there's 5 or 6 of the special services agency. Upper Valley Services. Somebody throw an egg at me if I forget yours, and no, don't, please. All right, a shout out to community mental health. Let's hear it, guys. These folks counted on a small raise last year. They got a 2.1% raise for direct service employees. And there was a commitment at the time that there would be another phase to that this year, and that they'd be able to start looking up the scale so that their therapists and their social service, the people who give social services, would start to come to a closer percentage of what you'd get if you were doing the same service, say, as a state employee or working in a school. And this year, that was not at all to be found in the governor's budget. So this is something that we need to be working for, because as Max pointed out, people need these services. And it's kind of a double hit, because they did the cut he described to individual services, service plans, and they failed to give a raise. And it's a real, that's a heavy hit. That leads to worse turnover, real problems. And then I wanted to point out there's also things that don't get a lot of attention. Vermont Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired, that helps people access education, access services. They've been looking to get a small percentage increase for, I believe, the last 9 years. And their major programs have been level funded for that long. And they scramble to get private funding, they scramble for this, that, and the other thing, but they're not getting the help that we owe each other through state services and through state support. And then the one that I think hits me personally in a certain way that I can't explain because I'm not on the program myself, but the attendant service program being eliminated completely, when about 30 years ago, when that was first instituted in this country, that was a model. It's kind of, I make a little analogy, and it may not be great, but I guess it's not a great analogy. But I think about myself and my own life getting back and forth to work. Okay, I put that little orange tag on my mirror, and when the snow is all over the place, when it's all steep grades everywhere except for those 1 or 2 designated spots, that tag, when I put that up, that's for me, that's a little bit of an equalizer. I can get around as well as Pat McDonald once I've got one of those, because I can park my car and get in and out. It just gives me a little chance to compete with the rest of the folks who don't have the same mobility impairments as I do. Well, if you think about something I think about, if my spinal cord injury had been a little bit worse at the 5th and 6th vertebrae, which is where it was hurt, if it had been a little bit worse, I would have needed personal care to be able to do things like toileting, feeding. If I didn't have the use of my hands, I got some use of my feet. I can, throw my own chair in the back of my car. If I didn't have some of those things, I would need some attendant services. Somebody to help me do some of the basics. And then, boom, I'm off and running, and I'll live a decent life. And we have peers, like, I don't know if any of you got a chance to hear Dave Saggy on the radio this noon, peers who have used that program and built their life. You know, they've done what they needed to do. They're getting out in the community. They are living a healthier life because they get out in the community. They have jobs. They can do so much more with a little bit to equalize with the rest of the people out there. And to me, it is shameless that that program has been frozen for 3 years and that they are talking about eliminating that program. And so it's not the biggest cut that's out there, but to me it says something beyond just the dollars and cents. It says, you know, we don't care if you have to impoverish yourself to get state services. Oh yeah, we'll give you state services, but you better spend now and qualify for Medicaid. You better be living on the edge of the economic cliff before we're going to help you out. And it's really, to me, that's one, I just don't know what else to say, so I'll stop talking about that.
To introduce you all to Ed Paquin, who is from Disability Rights Vermont, and Ed's been on the show before.
That's true.
We did a show about a year and a half ago, but you're very involved in the Disability Awareness Day today, and I just wanted you to talk about why is it important to have this day here in the State House.
Appreciate the question. The heart of the matter is that people who are making policy need to know how it is affecting the constituents about which they are making policy. And so everything from judicial processes that might affect somebody's civil rights if they're in a, say, a commitment hearing or something like that as a result of a mental health issue, or living day to day when budget decisions are made that affect the levels of services, the support for the people who deliver those services, any number of those kinds of situations affect people's lives very directly. And we're seeing a lot of examples of that this year. So to get back to your actual question, people need to come to the State House. Disability Awareness Day gives them an opportunity to come together with each other to show solidarity, but also to get support from each other when they speak with their legislators. So it brings a community together, and it shows that there is a kind of a critical mass of people whose lives are affected by certain kinds of policy decisions.
Do you know what I heard a lot about today is jobs? That these people want and need jobs. They want to be independent. They want to be self-sufficient. Mm-hmm. And there's some couple of things happening that may interfere with that, and I'd like you to talk about that because
there are several things, and one of the things, the theme for this year does have to do with social determinants of health. You know, the fancy way of saying it. Those kinds of things that are not directly medical care that affect a person's well-being and directly or indirectly their health. And when we're thinking about that, we're thinking about things like housing, like things like employment and other kinds of social factors, your engagement in the community. If you look at the budget, there are several things that may not be obvious connections with jobs on the surface, but actually really are. And I would point out a couple of them. One is the very large cut to the individual service plans for people with developmental services. Part of those service plans are employment services. And a lot of people with developmental disabilities who get service from the state also are employed. We don't think about that. We think about people, oh, they're getting services from the state, they're not out there working. Well, in very many cases, and in Vermont, you know, we do better than some states. They do sometimes get supported employment that gets them used to working in a particular job. They may not very quickly get enough hours and high enough pay so that they can get off the services. But those services very often, I guess I'd say, buy them another level of independence.
Right.
And that contact with the workforce, they get a sense of pride in contributing. They get a paycheck that gives them a little more resources.
Right.
And so there's a social benefit there. And it's not just to them, it's to all of us. Now, another one that's very direct, the Department of Disabilities, Aging, and Independent Living is looking at disconnecting the discontinuing the participant-directed attendant care program.
That one, you surprised me with that because I can't imagine it, to tell you the truth.
And what that is a program that was instituted 30 years ago. It's not a Medicaid program. So it is not connected to someone living nearly in poverty. It is connected specifically to their disability, and what you're allowed to do in that program is hire and direct an attendant that can help you with basic activities of daily living.
Right.
And that are things like toileting, showering or washing, feeding yourself. And so that program allows someone who, for example, maybe is quadriplegic, and those folks maybe have no use of their legs and use of their arms, some limited use,
right,
but not use of their hands. So an individual with that level of disability may not be able to do a lot of the self-care that they need to get up and about. But once they are up and about, they can use the power chair,
right,
and sometimes those sophisticated vans,
oh, yes,
so they can get in, drive around. And I know folks who make a good living on their own, and they may need help with the basics,
right,
but once they're up and around, they can participate in the workforce,
right,
and they are contributing members of society, paying their taxes, raising a family, and getting decent jobs.
Right. And jobs is what we hear from politicians. So
it's important.
Here's a whole group of people.
More than hearing from politicians, people need and want engagement.
Right, exactly.
And they want to feel as independent as possible.
Right.
And so whether you have a small amount of employment or a large amount of employment, it does an incredible amount for a person to be able to have that kind of engagement, and it gives you a sense of equality with the rest of society.
So I had one last question. When you've got a lot of people here today, this State House is packed. When they go home, what do you hope they take with them?
Well, what I would love them to take with them is a commitment from the legislature that they talked with today,
exactly,
that they are going to support the issues that are important to them in the budget process and in other parts of the system.
Well, I think they got that message today. I think hopefully they'll all be engaged.
So. And I think it is also important that I hope they take home with them an understanding that what you're dealing with here is a human process. Mm-hmm. It's interactions between human beings that make laws.
Right.
And I hope it's been a little demystified.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important for the legislatures to know a disabled person and what they deal with on a daily basis, and try to get some understanding of their life and what their hopes and dreams are.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
All right.
Hi, I have with me Max Barrow, who is the Outreach Director for the Green Mountain Self-Advocate Group. Max, how are you?
Good, yourself? How are you?
Oh, thank you very much. Taking hands. Very good. Thanks. So I just wanted to ask you, are there specific issues you want to talk about today at the State House here at Disability Awareness Day?
Yes, I would say one important issue is, cut to developmental services out of the recommended budget. That's, a very important issue to talk about, because that's one of the issues that will impact the lives of people with disabilities in terms of getting services to gain more independence.
Yeah, I've heard a lot. There's a lot on Facebook from members of people here today that they're very concerned about what's happening in Washington.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you've gone to Washington and testified in Congress, have you not?
I have, some years back.
Yeah.
I did testify to, I forgot the building name, but the Congress members during a disability policy seminar 5-6 years ago.
That's great. I bet you were amazing. So why do you think it's important to have a day like today of disability awareness for Vermonters?
Well, because people need to see that, we have dreams and hopes like everybody else. A disability doesn't define us totally. What defines us is our ability. And also, it's a good way for people with disabilities throughout the state to connect with their local representatives who work in the legislature to really talk about the issues that really matter to them, and even just just getting their voices heard, and whatever happens with decision making that will impact their lives directly, and just telling their stories, and really kind of making sure their legislators know what's up.
Thank you, Max, very much. You do a great job. You speak so well for the people that are here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'd like you to meet Nicole LeBlanc, who I met years ago. She was associated with the Green Mountain Self-Advocates, and now she will explain who she's working for, but she's in Washington, D.C. Nicole, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hello everyone, my name is Nicole LeBlanc. I live in Silver Spring, Maryland, the suburbs of D.C. I wear a gazillion hats. Today I'm here at the Vermont State House as part of the Vermont LEND program, which is a training program that people do for 9 months. It's funded by the Autism Cares Act, and it's distance accessible throughout the country. Other hats I wear, I'm Dr. Ruth Sullivan, a policy fellow at Autism Society in Bethesda, and starting on the 5th I'll be doing a SARTEC policy fellowship with the National Disability Rights Network, NDRN, in Washington, D.C.
Nicole, do you have any time for yourself?
Well, these are all part-time gigs. The current position I have at DDA is only like 15 something an hour, and trying to survive in an area with outrageous rent is not easy. My rent is $9.20 a month.
Used to work a little bit with Nicole, but now she is an avid Facebook user, so I know what she's up to. And what do you think of today and how important it is that Vermonters know about disabilities and about their people's desire to work?
It's important that the disability community is here at events like this, both local and national. We need to change the narrative in this country. The war on the disabled, the war on the diversity needs to stop. If we would all just follow the golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated, being different wouldn't be so bad. Being a minority wouldn't be so bad. I see people are afraid that, 30 years from now, whites are going to become a minority. Like, come on, let's follow the golden rule. Equal opportunity to everyone. There's nothing wrong with being different.
I agree with that. Believe it or not, I agree on something.
I say this here
to the graduation. Today we are here to celebrate 18 people who are have completed the Vermont Leadership Series. So we welcome you, family, and friends. I just want to mention that I was an alum of this, wonderful leadership series, and I graduated in 2015. And from what I learned, it is a unique opportunity for self-advocates and family members to really learn about the self-advocacy movement and learn with each other side by side. And also, it's a great way to build lasting relationships as we speak up together to fight for true inclusion, and also to stay connected with people that you meet that are as passionate as you about the movement. So I just want to say thank you so much for everyone for coming.
We've put together a sort of an awareness video for you all, and we hope that you like it.
We're good. We've done it. It's all set up. It's all good.
What if you always have to enter buildings through the back entrance? What if you are not allowed to go on a date without a chaperone? What if you are not given a chance to learn from your mistakes?
What if your income was greatly reduced by getting married?
What if you were not allowed to use your own money to buy a Snickers bar? What if everything about you was special, yet society treats you as a problem? What if you are in a room while people make decisions about your life without asking you? What if your partner is judged for liking you as you are? What if?
To close doesn't mean it's over. Every day we can be aware of our surroundings, be aware of each other, and do what we can to help one another. It's encouraging to see so many of you here today advocating for the support of people with disabilities and breaking down the societal barriers that exist today surrounding the roles of the disabled in our communities. The plain truth of the matter is, our disabled population has so much to give to Vermont. And I'm sure you'd all agree, Vermont employers and organizations would be smart to consider more people with disabilities to grow the workforce. Here in Vermont, as you might know, on average, we're losing 6 workers from our workforce every single day. In fact, since April of 2009, we have 15,450 fewer workers in our workforce right now. The good news is we have a lot of opportunity. In fact, as I travel around the state, there's a lot of optimism because we have jobs available. There are jobs opening up. There's 100 down at Mac Molding. There's 100 jobs opening today, but they don't have people to fill them. And up in the Northeast Kingdom, I hear the same story. So we have opportunity. There are jobs available. We need people to fill them. So I think that with the skills and talents of every Vermonter in this community as well here, workers of all ages, from youth to young adults, retirees, and individuals with disabilities. Helping those with disabilities to work means more Vermonters living independently, being self-sufficient. It's empowering and contributing to Vermont's economy. And every Vermonter who wants to work can, I believe, with the right support system. So today's theme of our community, our health, our well-being, echoes this sentiment. I know some of you have heard this before, but I like telling this story because right across the street, right next door to us at 133 State, was a place that my dad worked. He worked for the state, he worked for the highway department, but what some don't know is when he was younger, he grew up in Washington, Vermont. He was a truck driver by trade, entered the service, went to World War II, was involved in the D-Day invasion, but was severely injured in a tank. He was a tank operator. He lost both his legs. He was severely injured, spent 2 years in Walter Reed Hospital before returning to Vermont. He was pretty self-sufficient, very independent, so he liked to drive. He always did, so he had it long before ADA, long before some of the prosthetics that we have today. He got around, but he had hand control in his car, and he built a camp up at Lake Elmore. Well, he would have to call in his groceries because it was long before '88, and he couldn't get into the Elmore store. So he'd call in his groceries. And there was a young woman that was living with her sister going to college at Johnson State College who would bring out the groceries to him. That turned out to be my mom. And that's how they met. And I have a great amount of respect for my dad for not letting his disability get in the way, and for my mom for not letting it get in the way either. So the rest, they say, is history. They moved to Barrie, had 3 boys, and unfortunately, and he worked right there at 133 State. Again, they built a ramp for him so he could get in, but unfortunately, he passed away when I was 11 due to those injuries. But his independence, his self-reliance was something that I truly, truly admired. And when I see all of you here today, you inspire me as well in the same way that my dad did. So in closing, I'd really like to thank the Vermont Coalition for Disability Rights for hosting today's Disabilities Awareness Day. Thank you to Caroline Witten and the Me Too Orchestra for their wonderful performance. Yeah, that's good. Give them a hand. And thank you again for all you do, all the advocates here, for your dedication to spreading awareness of this very important issue. And again, thank you again for having me and spending the day with us here in the State House. I hope you enjoy your evening, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the future. So again, thank you very much.